How many dashboards does your team have right now? Not counting the ones you built for that one campaign that one time and have never looked at since, and not counting the ones that your agency sends over that nobody actually opens. The real number, the ones that somebody actually looks at on a regular basis. Even without counting those random ones that nobody looks at, I'm going to bet that it's more than you would like. And I will also bet that having all of those dashboards is not making your decision-making and prioritization processes any easier. And this is the thing that nobody tells you about marketing data. You can be drowning in it and still be starving. You can have a wall of green and red numbers and still walk into a planning meeting with no real idea of what to do next. More measurement doesn't automatically make you more informed. It has a very good chance of just making you overwhelmed. So here's what I want us to do today. Data and metrics is one of the core pillars of the Agile Marketing Operating System. It's a big chunk of the what section. And it is also, in my experience, the pillar where teams get the most confused. They think the problem is they don't have enough data. It is almost never that. The problem is they don't have a rhythm or a process for using the data they already have. So that's the whole episode, really. A healthy metrics culture is not about having more or getting more. It's about building the operating rhythm that turns the numbers you do have into decisions. And, shocker, it turns out Agile is one of the best ways to build that rhythm. Let me show you what I mean. Welcome to the Agile Marketing Edge, the first podcast dedicated to turning Agile theory into real-world marketing breakthroughs. I'm Andrea Fryrear, CEO of Agile Sherpas, and this week's guide on your climb to faster, smarter, outcome-driven marketing. Every week, we dig into the what, who, and how behind Agile marketing, from building high-velocity workflows and cutting waste, to measuring what actually matters and scaling success across teams. Today, we're staying right on that phrase, measuring what actually matters, because the data pillar of the operating system is where a lot of teams think they're doing great and are actually doing the least useful thing possible, measuring constantly, deciding rarely. We're going to look at what a real metrics culture looks like, why most teams don't have one, and how Agile rhythms close the gap between having data and actually using it. So let's get started. Let me name the actual dysfunction that we're struggling with here, because we need better data is the wrong diagnosis for just about every team that I've ever worked with. Here's how we find this out. We ask a few simple questions in our marketing operations assessment, and then we watch as it quietly gets the lowest score out of any of the 9 categories. Well, a lot of times these days it actually comes in ahead of AI readiness and benefit realization, but it's still really low. And just so you can have an idea of what we're asking people and why the numbers are so bad most of the time, here are the questions which we ask people to rate on a scale of 1 to 5. 5 is the best, 1 is the worst. I have strong confidence in the accuracy of the marketing data we collect. Data is readily available and easily accessible when my team needs it. We review and act on data often, so we stay current with experiments and their performance. We use data to inform the planning and execution of marketing activities. 5 simple statements with straightforward rating scales. It's not that hard, right? But I'm going to be real with you. The average scores on these questions routinely come in 2 or more points lower on a 5-point scale, 2 or more points lower than anything else we ask about. The dysfunction is that the data and the decisions live in separate systems. Data lives in dashboards. Decisions tend to get made in meetings. Often an annual planning meeting, maybe a quarterly review, and in between those meetings, nobody is systematically looking at what the numbers are telling them and changing course accordingly. The dashboard, especially in the age of AI, is updating maybe even in real time, and the plan updates once a year. I mean, that gap is where a lot of pain originates. And it is not just one-off client assessments with those 5 questions that tell us this. In this year's State of Agile Marketing data, we asked 500 people how often their teams update or adjust their plans. Among Agile marketers, 89% are doing at least monthly, probably every 2 weeks when they have sprint planning. So yay for those folks. Not so much yay for the non-Agile marketers who are only doing it 66% at least monthly. So if we flip that around, it sounds even worse. A third of non-Agile teams are updating their plans quarterly or less. So 4 times a year at best. That means that a third of teams are looking at real-time data and adjusting their actual plan of record just 4 times a year or less. The data is fast, and the world is fast. Everything around us is fast, but somehow our response is still really slow. But it's not a metrics problem in the sense of we need more data or we need a better dashboard. It's a cadence problem. The measurement is happening, but we are not metabolizing that data at the rate that it deserves and demands. So the first shift I want you to think about is to stop asking whether or not you have the right metrics at all. You need to start asking, how often does a metric actually change what we do? And if your honest answer is pretty much once a year when we look at that strategy deck that we made last year, no new dashboard is going to fix that. Not even one that updates automatically thanks to some automated recurring task that you have scheduled in your LLM of choice. Because again, you don't have a data problem. You have an operating rhythm problem. Now, the usual advice when somebody says we're drowning in dashboards is just cut the vanity metrics. Focus on the North Star. And there is real wisdom in that focused world. And the folks at Amplitude and Reforge have done a lot of great work here. The North Star idea is a good one. You pick one single leading indicator that best captures the value your customer's actually getting from your product or service, and you make sure it isn't a vanity number. I like the test that Amplitude uses because it's clean. Could this metric go up while the business gets worse? If the answer is yes, then that's a vanity metric. And this is a useful way to cull your data. Not saying you shouldn't do it, but we need to complicate it just a little bit because a lot of marketing teams import the North Star framework and still don't actually fix anything. Because picking the right metric, finding your North Star, is a one-time thing. It gives you clarity, but you do it one time. Using it repeatedly becomes an act of discipline. And teams love the first part, the choosing part, where we get to go on an offsite and we have a lot of whiteboards and we do the words before numbers exercise where you finally name the one metric to rule them all. It feels like progress. But then everybody goes back to their desks and the fire drills start. And the North Star gets a nice little tile on the dashboard next to the 40 vanity tiles that we probably didn't remove because we were too nervous about it. And then nothing about the actual operating rhythm changes. So here's my contrarian opinion about this. Vanity metrics don't proliferate because teams don't know which numbers matter. They proliferate because there's no regular forum where teams are forced to use a number to make a call. When there is no cadence forcing a prioritization decision, then every metric feels equally optional. They have equal weight. And so we keep all of them just in case. And so the dashboard sprawl and the data overwhelm isn't about ignorance or lacking insight into something. This is what happens when measurement has no consequence, which means for a lot of marketing teams, the fix is not choose better metrics. It is build the recurring moment where a metric has to earn its place on the dashboard by informing a decision. If we get the cadence right, then the vanity metrics start to starve on their own because nobody is paying attention to them. We get the cadence wrong, the most beautiful, clearly articulated North Star framework in the world just ends up being one more tile that doesn't mean anything in terms of how we spend our time as marketing teams. So, if the problem is cadence, then let's talk about what Agile marketing actually installs, because this is the part that is mechanistic, not motivational. Because look, Agile marketing is not a vibe. It's not just a mindset. It is a set of recurring events that each have a specific job. 2 of them are actually metric events, whether you call them that or not. So the iteration or sprint review is where you look at what shipped and how it performed. Oftentimes we think of this as a demo meeting where we're producing work in progress and getting feedback. Excellent for that. Don't not do that. But for marketing teams in particular, use the review moment to look back at previously shipped campaigns and evaluate their performance. This makes them immensely more powerful. And then, of course, we have our retrospective, where we should be looking at how the team worked and what to change. And that can and should include our use of data. Have we effectively incorporated the data we have into the process and decision-making now? If not, how will we change the process in order to make that happen? Both of them are functionally forced appointments with your data. You cannot skip these without skipping them on purpose. That's the mechanism. The rhythm should remove the option of not examining your data. And you can see then the downstream effect in the data that we have, not all data. You can see the downstream effect of incorporating these practices into the data that we have collected as part of the State of Agile Marketing report. Because it's not just that Agile teams make adjustments to their plans more often. They do. We covered that. It's what frequent adjustment does to their confidence in where their effort is going. So we ask how confident people are that their planning habits can keep them focused on the most important work. Our Agile respondents, 82% of them said they are extremely or very confident. Among our non-Agile respondents, it's just 59%. That is a 23-point gap in something incredibly valuable. The sense that your effort is going where it should. And notice what this number really is. It is not, we have a lot of data, we have more data, we have enough data. Both groups have data. It is, we trust that our data is steering us. And that trust does not come exclusively from the dashboard. It comes from the fact that every couple of weeks, the data must be looked at, discussed, and acted on. That confidence, that much, much higher level of confidence for Agile marketers is a byproduct of cadence. You cannot dashboard your way into that level of confidence. You have to metabolize your way to it on a regular, recurring schedule. And there's also a fear that this addresses head on. A lot of leaders worry that reacting to data that frequently is going to lead to chaos. That if you're making adjustments every couple of weeks, you're just going to spin out. But again, our report data speaks to this directly. Because when we asked whether teams could stay organized when priorities change, every single Agile marketer we surveyed said they were at least somewhat confident they could. Not a majority, all of them. The rhythm is what makes frequent data-driven change feel organized and deliberate instead of frantic, because it's happening inside of a stable structure, not alongside one. Quick pause here, because this is exactly the kind of thing we teach people to actually do, not just nod along to during a podcast episode. If you want to take what we're talking about today or in any of our past episodes and build it into how your team really works, come check out The Ropes. It's our online learning platform, and we just recently ungated about $1,600 worth of material and made it free. It is real training on the rhythms and practices that turn this stuff from a good idea on a podcast into something your team actually does every single sprint. There's also a quarterly certification workshop if you want to go deeper and come out with a credential that makes the case for you internally. Head to theropes.agileSherpas.com and go poke around. Totally free, substantial education, and it is built for exactly the marketer who is listening to this thinking, okay, but how do I actually do this? That's the point of The Ropes. Okay, back to what we're going to do. Here's a piece of the data pillar that dashboards are actively bad at, and this is the one that I think we actually probably need to fix the most. When we asked how often teams use customer insights or data to guide what they work on, 87% of Agile marketers said they do it often versus 72% of non-Agile marketers. And I want to be very clear here about why this gap matters, because it's easy to just use customer insight under generic marketing best practice grossness. Most of what lives on a marketing dashboard is behavioral exhaust. Clicks, opens, sessions, conversions. It tells you what happened, but it is really quiet about why those things happened. And why is the thing that actually lets you make a good next decision. A conversion rate dropping tells you something is wrong. It does not tell you that your new landing page is confusing to the exact segment that you were trying to focus on. Only talking to or listening to actual customers tells you that. And this is really the North Star lesson that we talked about kind of turned around. Because the reason a good North Star metric is a leading indicator is that it captures customer value, not internal activity. But most teams try to infer customer value entirely from their quantitative exhaust, because that's what shows up on a dashboard and is a lot easier to get at usually. But customer insight is the input that keeps your metrics honest. It's how you catch a number that's going up while the customer experience is quietly getting worse. That's the vanity metric trap that those product folks are always warning us about. And qualitative customer insight is the antidote to it. Agile teams do this more, not because they love their customers more or they're just universally more curious people. It is, you guessed it, the rhythm again. When you're reviewing work every couple of weeks and planning the next small slice, what are we hearing from customers becomes a live input to a real conversation that drives short-term decisions. It is not a research project that gets commissioned or talked about one time and shelved. This cadence pulls the customer voice into the room on a regular basis. So build customer insight into your review rhythm as a standing input, not a special occasion when we got a big survey back. Talk about what we learned from customers this iteration or sprint, and what does it change about what we're going to do in the next sprint. And talk about it every time. Side note, if you want to go deeper on customer centricity in Agile marketing, go back and check out episode 32 of this podcast. Okay, let me pull this all together into the one thing I actually want you to walk away believing, because it reframes what good at metrics even means. Most teams, if you ask, are you data-driven? Will point at their instrumentation, dashboards, attribution model, tool stack. What that is evidence of measurement. It is not evidence of a metrics culture. Those are different things, and confusing them is how you end up with a very expensive analytics stack and a team that still plans on gut feel or whatever the highest ranking executive said in the hallway last week. A metrics culture is a behavioral property, not a technical one. You can see it in the answers to 3 questions, and none of them are about tools. Questions are, how often does a metric change a decision here? When the numbers say something uncomfortable, does the plan actually move? And the third question is the customer's actual voice in the room when we decide what to build next? That's the reframe, and it maps pretty cleanly onto the Agile Marketing Operating System. This is the what we work on pillar. What work gets chosen and measured, but it comes alive through the how section, through the day-to-day practices and the cadence. The data pillar and the practices pillar are not separate. Your metrics culture is only ever as good as the rhythm you run it on. A team with mediocre dashboards and a disciplined bi-weekly loop is going to outdecide a team with a beautiful analytics stack and no cadence every single time. Every time. Hit your back 10 seconds button on that one if you need to, because it is the argument of this whole episode. Rhythm beats instrumentation. All right, here's what you can actually do about all of this week. No need for a giant data transformation, just a few concrete moves. 1, count your dashboards, and then count your decisions. Literally count them. List every dashboard or report that your team maintains. Then next to it, write the last decision that dashboard actually changed. The blank rows with nothing in the decision section, those are your vanity metrics. And now you know which ones you can stop maintaining. Start there, because then you get a whole bunch of free time to work on the other stuff. Second thing to do next week, install one recurring metrics appointment. If you already run sprint or iteration reviews, great. Make what did the numbers and the customers tell us, and what does it change, an explicit, non-skippable part of it. If you don't run reviews yet, great. You found your next Agile practice to adopt, and it will be the highest leverage one for this particular problem. And third, name one leading indicator and give it a decision, not just a tile on a dashboard. Do the North Star exercise if you want to, but the test is not, did we pick a good metric? The test is whether at your next review meeting, which you're going to schedule, that metric is required to inform an actual call. A metric with no decision attached is meaningless decoration. Fourth thing to do, put the customer's voice on the standing agenda. One question, every iteration. What did we hear from customers, and what does it change? That's it. That's the input that a lot of dashboards just cannot give you, and it's the one that's going to keep the rest of your numbers honest. Do those 4 things, and you won't need any more data. You will probably have less data, but you'll finally be using it, not feeling overwhelmed by it. That is metrics culture. Until next time, I'm Andrea Fryrear, and remember, struggle is real, but so is Agile marketing.